I watched my ex-husband's face crumble as I stepped out of my Bentley. 6 months earlier, he laughed at my worthless life, while I silently knew about the $600 million inheritance sitting in my account. The look in Daniel's eyes was worth every tear I'd ever cried. There he stood, the man who once told me I was nothing, now desperate to be something in my life again. Hey everyone! Hope you're having a great day wherever you're watching from. If you've ever been underestimated or pushed aside, this story is for you. My name is Rebecca Turner, and 3 years ago I was eating ramen noodles for dinner in a studio apartment I could barely afford. The man I married, the man who promised to love me through anything, had walked out, taking my self-worth with him. He told me no one would ever want damaged goods with an empty bank account. But what you don't know about me yet is that my quiet grandmother had secretly built an empire worth over $500 million. And she left every penny to me. This isn't just about money, though. It's about the man who asked me on a date when I was still driving that old Toyota. The man who never knew I would become one of the wealthiest women in the state. The man who loved me for exactly who I was when I had nothing. If this sounds like something you want to hear, smash that like button and subscribe. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I still remember the exact moment my life split in two. The courthouse steps were slick with rain as I clutched my final divorce papers. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from the realization that 6 years of marriage had ended with me getting nothing but debt and damage. That's when I heard the distinctive purr of Daniel's BMW. He pulled alongside me, designer sunglasses perched on his perfect nose despite the cloudy day. Still driving that death trap? His eyes flickered dismissively to my grandmother's old Toyota. God, Rebecca, I really dodged a bullet with you. I stood frozen as he continued, each word another knife. No man is ever going to want you, he said, checking his Rolex, the one I'd worked overtime for months to give him. You have nothing to offer. You are nothing. Rainwater mixed with tears on my face as he drove away, tires sending dirty water across my already soaked clothes. I got into my grandmother's car, hands trembling as I turned the key. What I didn't know, what neither of us knew, was that at that exact moment, in a lawyer's office across town, Thomas Blackwell was finalizing the paperwork that would change everything. Ms. Turner must be notified immediately, he was saying to his assistant. Her grandmother's estate has cleared probate. All $612 million of it is now legally hers. And, just like that, everything was about to change. I met Daniel Wellington during my sophomore year of college. I was working 2 jobs to pay tuition while he drove a car his parents bought him. The campus coffee shop where I pulled espresso shots became the backdrop of our love story, me in a stained apron, him in pressed chinos and cashmere sweaters. You have the most honest eyes I've ever seen, he told me the first time he asked me out. Looking back, I realized what he actually meant was that I was easy to read. Easy to manipulate. I grew up with just my grandmother after my parents died in a car accident when I was 12. Gran took me in, raising me in her modest 2-bedroom house on the edge of town. She mended clothes for extra money and drove that blue Toyota until the odometer stopped working. We never had much, but she made sure I never felt poor. Money doesn't make the person, Becca, she'd say, her fingers moving deftly through fabric. Character does. What I didn't understand then was that Gran was teaching me a lesson that would save me years later. She was testing me. Daniel was my opposite in every way. His family had money, not wealth, but enough for comfort and status. His father was a bank manager, his mother a real estate agent. They lived in a house 4 times the size of Gran's and took vacations to Europe every summer. I can show you the world, Daniel promised. It sounded romantic then. I didn't realize he meant he'd show me everything I lacked. The first time I brought him to meet Gran, I watched him assess her home, the worn furniture, the outdated kitchen, the garden where she grew vegetables to save money. He was polite, charming even, but his eyes revealed everything. Your grandmother seems quaint, he said on the drive back to campus. Is she always so frugal? It's not frugality, I defended. She just doesn't believe in wasting. Daniel nodded, but I saw something in his expression, a calculation. Well, at least you have me now. 2 years later, we married in a ceremony his parents largely paid for. Gran came, wearing her best dress, one she'd made herself. I noticed Daniel's mother whispering to her friends, eyeing Gran's handmade outfit. When I tried to introduce them, his mother made excuses to walk away. "Don't mind Caroline," Daniel said. "She's just particular about who she associates with." The warning signs were there from the beginning. I just refused to see them. Gran died 8 months after our wedding. The small house and Toyota went to me, her only living relative. Daniel immediately suggested selling the house. "It's basically worthless," he argued. "The land alone is worth more than that shack." "It was her home," I said. "Our home." We fought about it for weeks until I finally relented. The money from the sale went into a joint account that mysteriously emptied whenever I mentioned wanting to go back to school to finish my degree. "We need to be practical," Daniel would say. "Your job at the firm is stable. Why risk that for some degree you might not even use?" What he really meant was, why invest in your independence when I've worked so hard to make you dependent? For years into our marriage, I discovered the first betrayal. A text message not meant for me, sent to our shared iPad while his phone was charging. "Miss you already. Last night was incredible. Delete this." It was from Alexis, his assistant at the investment firm where he'd recently been promoted. I stared at those words until they burned into my retinas. When confronted, Daniel didn't deny it. Instead, he turned it around on me. "What did you expect?" he said, voice ice cold. "You've let yourself go. You're boring." Alexis understands the pressure I'm under. I believed him. That's the part that still makes my stomach turn. I actually apologized to him. I promised to be better, more interesting, more understanding. I dyed my hair, bought uncomfortable lingerie with money I'd been saving for classes, and pretended not to notice when he came home with lipstick on his collar that wasn't mine. When I found evidence of the second affair 6 months later, I confronted him again. This time, his response was different. "I've been talking to a lawyer," he said casually, as if discussing dinner plans. "I think we should separate." Just like that, 6 years evaporated. The divorce process was brutal. Daniel had friends at prestigious law firms. I had a part-time administrative job and a savings account with less than $3,000. His lawyer portrayed me as a gold digger who'd trapped a promising young executive. The fact that I'd supported him through his early career, that I'd given up my education for his advancement, none of that mattered. In the end, I walked away with nothing but debt and that old Toyota. "You should be grateful," Daniel's lawyer told me after the final hearing. "My client is being very generous." The day the divorce was finalized, the day in the courthouse parking lot, I truly believed I had nothing left. My grandmother gone, my marriage destroyed, my future uncertain. That night, alone in the tiny apartment I could barely afford, I opened the single box of Gran's personal effects I'd managed to keep. Inside was her worn Bible, some costume jewelry, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. "Open when you're ready," it said in her familiar handwriting. I almost opened it then. Almost. Instead, I placed it back in the box, too emotionally exhausted to handle whatever final wisdom Gran had left me. Maybe tomorrow, I thought. Maybe when it doesn't hurt so much. I had no idea that envelope contained the first clue to a truth that would shake my world to its foundations. A truth about who my grandmother really was. A truth that would have changed everything if I'd known it during my divorce. A truth that would make Daniel regret every cruel word, every dismissive glance, and every dollar he'd fought to keep from me. But sometimes, timing is everything. And Gran's timing, even from beyond the grave, would prove to be absolutely perfect. 89 days after the divorce, I hit rock bottom. My car, Gran's ancient Toyota, finally died on the interstate during a thunderstorm. Water poured through the cracked sunroof as I sat stranded, watching cars speed past. No one stopped. I called roadside assistance only to discover my policy had lapsed, another bill Daniel had managed during our marriage and neglected to mention during the divorce. My phone showed 8% battery, and I had exactly $42.17 in my checking account. Payday was still 4 days away. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel and did something I hadn't allowed myself to do since the courthouse parking lot. I broke down completely. In that moment of absolute desperation, I remembered the envelope. Gran's last message to me: open when you're ready. If ever there was a time I needed her wisdom, it was now. I dug through my bag until I found my keys. On the keychain was a small metal house, a gift from Gran on my 16th birthday. Always have a home with me, she'd said. Inside that tiny house was the key to her safe deposit box. The envelope had instructed me to access it if I ever found myself truly lost. When my phone died minutes later, I made a decision that would change everything. I abandoned the car and walked 3 miles in the rain to the nearest bus stop. With my last dollars, I bought a ticket downtown to First National Bank. The bank manager's face shifted from irritation to curiosity when I presented Gran's safe deposit box key. This box hasn't been accessed in years, he said. We sent notices. I'm her granddaughter, I explained. Rebecca Turner. I have identification. He led me to a private room. The box he brought was small, unassuming. My hands trembled as I opened it, half expecting to find a few $100s and a sentimental note. Instead, I found a flash drive, an old photograph of Gran standing in front of a skyscraper, and a business card for Thomas Blackwell, attorney at law, with a handwritten note: when the time comes, call him. He knows everything. I stared at these cryptic items, more confused than ever. The bank manager knocked gently. Miss Turner? There's a call for you at the front desk. A Mr. Blackwell. My blood went cold. That's impossible. I haven't called him. The manager looked uncomfortable. He said your accessing the box would trigger an automatic notification. He's been waiting for this call for almost a year. Dazed, I followed him to the desk and accepted the phone. Rebecca Turner? The voice was deep, authoritative. Yes, this is Thomas Blackwell. Your grandmother was Catherine Turner, correct? Yes, but how? I've been your grandmother's attorney for 40 years. We need to meet immediately. Can you come to my office now? I glanced down at my soaked clothes, my ruined shoes. I don't have a car. I'll send a car for you. Wait there. 20 minutes later, a sleek black town car pulled up outside the bank. The driver opened an umbrella and escorted me inside, seemingly unfazed by my bedraggled appearance. Thomas Blackwell's office occupied the entire top floor of a downtown high-rise. The receptionist, impeccably dressed and perfectly polite, immediately ushered me into a conference room despite my dripping clothes. Mr. Blackwell will be with you shortly, she said. Would you like something to change into? We keep clothes on hand for clients. Before I could answer, she disappeared, returning moments later with a simple black dress and heels. The bathroom is through there. Take your time. The bathroom was larger than my entire apartment. I changed slowly, trying to process what was happening. The dress fit perfectly, as if it had been selected specifically for me. When I emerged, Thomas Blackwell was waiting. He was in his 70s, sharp-eyed and distinguished, with a presence that commanded the room. Rebecca, he said warmly, as if we were old friends. You look just like Catherine at your age. Please sit down. He pressed a button and a hidden panel slid open, revealing a large screen. What I'm about to tell you will change your life. Are you prepared for that? I almost laughed. What life? My marriage was over. My car was dead. My apartment lease was month to month, and I was one missed paycheck from homelessness. I'm prepared, I said. Blackwell nodded and touched the screen. A photograph appeared, my grandmother, decades younger, standing between 2 men in business suits. Your grandmother wasn't just Catherine Turner, seamstress and grandmother, Blackwell said. She was Catherine Elizabeth Turner Hayes, founder of Hayes Development Corporation. My mind raced to keep up. Hayes Development was one of the largest private real estate companies in the country. I'd seen their buildings in every major city. That's impossible, I whispered. Gran mended clothes for extra money. She drove a 20-year-old Toyota. She lived exactly the life she wanted to live, Blackwell finished. Catherine built her empire from nothing, but she never forgot where she came from. She chose to live simply, a decision that confused many of her peers. But she had her reasons. He pulled out a thick folder. Your grandmother built Hayes Development from the ground up. When your grandfather died, she took sole control. 30 years ago, she made a decision that shocked the business world. She disappeared from public life completely. But why? I asked. To raise you, he said simply. When your parents died, Catherine had a choice: continue running her empire or give you a normal childhood. She chose you. Tears filled my eyes. But why didn't she tell me? She wanted to protect you from those who would use you for your family's wealth. And she wanted to know that whoever loved you for yourself. Blackwell's expression darkened. Your ex-husband failed that test spectacularly. A cold realization washed over me. You knew about Daniel? Blackwell nodded grimly. Catherine hired private investigators. She knew everything: the affairs, the financial manipulation, all of it. She was preparing to tell you everything when she became ill. She knew and didn't tell me? The betrayal stung. She made me promise to wait until after your divorce was final before revealing the truth. He slid a document across the table. This is your grandmother's will. Hayes Development Corporation, along with all associated holdings, properties, and accounts, passes directly to you. The total value is approximately $612 million. The room spun. $612 million? Give or take a few million depending on the market. Blackwell almost smiled. Catherine insisted the divorce be finalized with Daniel believing you had nothing. She wanted him to show his true colors. But I could have used this during the divorce. And he would have taken half, Blackwell interrupted. Catherine protected your inheritance through a series of trusts that only activated after the divorce was final. Legally, these assets didn't exist during your marriage. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process this information. My grandmother, the woman who darned socks and grew vegetables to save money, had been a multi-millionaire business tycoon. There's more, Blackwell continued. Catherine left instructions about Daniel. He slid another folder toward me. Inside were photographs, bank statements, emails, evidence of Daniel's affairs, his financial misconduct at work, tax irregularities. What am I supposed to do with this? I asked. Whatever you want, Blackwell replied. Catherine believed in justice, not revenge. But she wanted you to have options. As I stared at the evidence of Daniel's betrayal, something else caught my eye: the date on Blackwell's watch. Is that the right date? I asked. He glanced down. Yes, why? Today would have been my wedding anniversary. Blackwell's expression softened. Catherine always did have a flair for timing. As I sat there, overwhelmed by revelations, my phone suddenly rang, a number I didn't recognize since my phone had died earlier. Blackwell handed me a charging cable. You should answer that, he said. It might be important. I connected my phone and answered. Hello, Ms. Turner? This is Jim from Reliable Towing. We've got your Toyota. The police called it in as abandoned. There'll be a fee to release it. Reality came crashing back. I was supposedly worth over $600 million, yet I couldn't afford to retrieve my broken-down car. How much? I asked. $200 plus $50 for each day of storage. I looked at Blackwell, who nodded and handed me a sleek black credit card with my name already on it. I'll be there within the hour, I told Jim. When I hung up, Blackwell was watching me with approval. Your grandmother would be proud. First thing you think about is taking care of your responsibilities. It was her car, I said simply. And now you can afford any car you want. I shook my head, still processing. I need time to understand all this. Of course, Blackwell said. But there's one more thing Catherine wanted you to know immediately. He handed me a sealed letter, my name written in Gran's familiar handwriting. She wrote this the week before she died. With trembling hands, I opened it. My dearest Becca, if you're reading this, then you've reached the point where you truly needed me. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything while I was alive. I built my company from nothing but determination and grit, but my greatest achievement was raising you. Money is a powerful tool, but it's also a test of character. I've watched how money changes people, rarely for the better. I wanted you to develop your own strength without the weight of wealth. I wanted you to know love without the shadow of suspicion that comes with fortune. I failed to protect you from Daniel, and for that, I'm truly sorry. I should have seen through his charm sooner. The wealth I leave you comes with only one condition: use it wisely. Not just for comfort, but for purpose. Find what matters to you and pursue it with the same passion I pursued my dreams. Remember, money reveals character. It doesn't create it. All my love, Gran. As I folded the letter, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Daniel. Heard your car broke down. Guess things aren't working out so well for you. Let me know if you need a loan. We could discuss terms over dinner. I handed the phone to Blackwell, who read the message and raised an eyebrow. What would you like to do, Miss Turner? For the first time since my divorce, perhaps for the first time in my adult life, I felt completely in control of my destiny. First, I said, I'd like to retrieve my grandmother's car. Then I'd like to understand exactly what I own. Blackwell smiled. And after that, I thought about Daniel's smug text, about the years of manipulation and betrayal, about the man who had believed I had nothing to offer. After that, I said, I'd like to show Daniel exactly what he threw away. The next morning, I woke up in a hotel suite larger than my entire apartment. Blackwell had insisted I stay somewhere secure while we sorted out the details of my inheritance. My ancient Toyota sat in the hotel's parking garage. I'd refused to abandon it despite the concierge's raised eyebrows. Miss Turner, your 9 a.m. appointment is here, the hotel phone announced, jolting me from my daze. Blackwell had assembled what he called a transition team, financial advisors, security specialists, and executive assistants. They arrived with rolling briefcases and tablets, filling the suite's conference room with their polished presence. We need to discuss your immediate security concerns, said Marcus, the head of personal security. Your status has changed overnight. There are protocols we need to implement. I don't understand, I said. Nobody knows about my inheritance yet. Blackwell exchanged glances with Marcus. Information leaks. It always does. People will be watching for Catherine Turner's heir. We need to be proactive. By noon, my head was spinning with information. Offshore accounts, real estate portfolios spanning 5 continents, charitable foundations, corporate holdings. Names, numbers, and responsibilities blurred together. This is too much, I finally said, interrupting a presentation about international tax implications. I was an administrative assistant yesterday. I can't run a global corporation today. The room fell silent until Blackwell spoke. Your grandmother anticipated this. She left specific instructions for a transitional period. He passed me another document. This outlines a 6-month onboarding process. You'll work directly with each department head, learning the business from the ground up. And in the meantime? I asked. In the meantime, you live your life, just with better resources. That afternoon, I returned to my apartment one last time. The security team waited in black SUVs outside while I packed my meager belongings. Mrs. Patel, my elderly neighbor, watched from her doorway. Moving out, Rebecca? She asked, concern in her eyes. Yes, I admitted. Some family matters came up. Her face softened. I'm sorry about your car trouble yesterday. I would have driven you, but my arthritis. I remembered how she'd brought me homemade chai when I first moved in after the divorce. How she'd slipped me extra food by mistake during weeks when my pantry was empty. Mrs. Patel, would you like to have dinner with me sometime? I asked impulsively. I'd love to stay in touch. She beamed. That would be lovely, dear. As I wrote down my new number, I realized she was the first person I wanted to share my good fortune with, not to impress her, but because she'd shown kindness when I had nothing to offer in return. The following week passed in a whirlwind. I moved into a temporary residence, a penthouse apartment that made me dizzy with its expansiveness. I started my corporate education, spending days at Hayes Development headquarters, absorbing information like a sponge. You're catching on remarkably quickly, noted Elaine Hayes, the company's acting CEO and my grandmother's most trusted executive. Catherine always said you had her business sense, though you didn't know it yet. I still feel like an imposter, I confessed. Elaine's expression softened. Catherine started with nothing but determination. Blood matters less than backbone in this business. You have both. On Friday evening, exhausted from information overload, I decided to escape the penthouse. Despite my security team's objections, I insisted on going to a small neighborhood bookstore cafe I'd discovered before the divorce, a quiet place where Daniel would never set foot because it wasn't prestigious enough. At least let us do a sweep first, Marcus compromised. I agreed, waiting in the car while they checked the location. When they finally allowed me inside, I ordered a simple coffee and found a corner table, relishing the normalcy. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" I looked up to see a man about my age, holding a coffee and a worn paperback. The cafe had filled while I was lost in thought, and mine was the only table with an empty chair. "It's all yours," I offered. "Thanks. It's packed tonight." He sat down, placing his book on the table, a collection of Robert Frost poems I recognized immediately. "The Road Not Taken?" I asked, nodding toward the book. That was my grandmother's favorite. His eyes lit up. "Mine too. I'm Noah, by the way. Noah Chin. Rebecca." For the next hour, we talked about everything except money and status. Noah was a high school English teacher who coached basketball after school. He laughed easily and listened intently. When my security detail appeared, signaling it was time to leave, I felt genuinely disappointed. "Maybe I'll see you here again sometime," Noah said. I nodded, suddenly reluctant to re-enter my new reality. Outside, Marcus looked concerned. "Miss Turner, your ex-husband called the office 3 times today asking for you." My stomach dropped. How did he know to call Hayes Development? "That's what we're trying to determine. The information about your inheritance hasn't been made public yet." Unease settled over me as we drove back to the penthouse. In the elevator, my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Interesting developments, Rebecca. Dinner tomorrow? We should talk about our future. I know you miss us." I showed Marcus the message. His expression hardened. He knows something. We need to figure out what and how. The next morning, Blackwell called an emergency meeting. "We've identified the leak," he announced grimly. "Daniel's new girlfriend works for the bank that manages some of Hayes Development's smaller accounts. She accessed confidential files after hours." "What does he know exactly?" I asked. "Enough to know you've come into significant wealth. Not enough to know the full extent." I thought about Daniel's text, his immediate pivot from mockery to reconciliation. The same man who had laughed at my struggles now wanted to discuss our future. He'll try to claim he deserves part of the inheritance, I realized. That we were together when Gran died. "Let him try," Blackwell said confidently. "Your grandmother's legal team has been preparing for this possibility for years. But we need to be strategic about how we proceed." That afternoon, I received flowers at the penthouse, an elaborate arrangement with a card in Daniel's handwriting. "Thinking of our happier times. Let's start over. I never stopped loving you. D." The same hands that had typed cruel messages about my worthless life now signed love notes. The man who had discarded me like yesterday's trash now wanted reconciliation. The thought made me physically ill. "What would you like me to do with these?" asked Maria, my new housekeeper. I stared at the ostentatious flowers, roses in precisely the wrong shade of pink, the kind Daniel always bought because they were expensive, not because I liked them. Donate them to the Children's Hospital, I decided. And block his number from my phone. But Daniel wasn't so easily deterred. The next day, he appeared at Hayes Development headquarters, charming his way past reception before security intervened. "Miss Turner is in meetings all day," Elaine informed him icily. "I'll wait," Daniel insisted, settling into a lobby chair with smug confidence. I watched this unfold on the security feed in my office, my heart racing. I wasn't ready to face him yet, not until I understood my own power better. "Your grandmother kept a private residence few people knew about," Elaine told me, closing my office door. "It might be a good place for you to work without interruptions for a few days." That evening, I relocated to a stunning but understated house overlooking the lake, a property so private it didn't appear in any of Hayes Development's public portfolios. "Gran lived here?" I asked, running my hand along the bookshelves filled with well-worn classics. This was her true home, Blackwell confirmed. The small house in town was her cover, her way of maintaining the simple life she valued while still having a place to conduct business privately. I walked through rooms filled with subtle luxury and personal touches, photographs of Gran with world leaders, art collected from her travels, and in one special room, pictures of me throughout my childhood, displayed with obvious pride. In her study, I found journals dating back decades. Opening one from around the time of my parents' death, I read, "Rebecca came to live with me today. My heart breaks for her loss, but I've made a decision. She will have a normal childhood, free from the burden of wealth and status. I've seen what money does to children, the entitlement, the isolation, the mistrust. I want her to know real friendship, real love, and real purpose before she inherits my legacy. This may be my most important business decision yet. Tears streamed down my face as I realized the deliberate choice Gran had made, sacrificing her public life to raise me away from the spotlight of wealth. She had chosen me over empire. As I continued reading her journals, I discovered something else. Gran had known about Daniel's true nature from the beginning. She'd had him investigated before our wedding, but decided not to tell me what she'd found. I must let Rebecca make her own choices, even poor ones, she wrote. If I intervene, she will never fully trust her own judgment. The lessons we learn through pain are the ones that transform us. I only pray the pain won't be too great. I closed the journal, emotions churning. Part of me felt betrayed that she'd let me marry Daniel knowing what she knew. Another part understood her wisdom. I needed to learn to recognize manipulation and deceit for myself. My phone rang, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Rebecca, don't hang up. Daniel's voice sent a chill through me. We need to talk. How did you get this number? I demanded. Does it matter? Look, I know about the inheritance. I know about Hayes' development. We were married when your grandmother died, I have rights. We were separated when she died, I corrected. And divorced when the will was executed. Technicalities, he dismissed. We had 6 years together. I supported your career. I cheated on me, belittled me, financially controlled me, I finished. You told me I had nothing to offer, Daniel. You said no man would ever want me. I was upset, he backpedaled. People say things they don't mean during divorce. You know I always loved you. No, you loved what I could do for you. Now you love what you think I can give you. Don't be naive, he snapped, his pleasant facade cracking. You don't know how to handle this kind of wealth. You need me. What I need is for you to lose my number, I replied, ending the call. Seconds later, my phone lit up with a text. This isn't over. I have information your board members would find very interesting. Meet me tomorrow or regret it. I immediately called Blackwell, forwarding him the message. What information could he possibly have? I asked. Nothing, Blackwell assured me. This is a bluff, classic manipulation. Your grandmother anticipated this type of threat. Then why am I so scared? I admitted. Even with all this wealth and protection, part of me still freezes when he makes demands. That's normal, Blackwell said gently. Financial abuse and emotional manipulation leave invisible wounds that take time to heal. But you're not facing him alone this time. The next morning, a package arrived at Gran's Lake House, a small blue box with a card. Saw this and thought of you. Coffee again sometime? Noah. Inside was a delicate bookmark with a Robert Frost quote. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. I held the simple gift, remembering our conversation at the cafe, how Noah had seen me as just Rebecca, not an heiress, not a victim, not a prize to be won. In that moment, I made a decision. I would no longer react to Daniel's manipulations. I would no longer let fear guide my choices. Taking out my phone, I typed a message to Noah. Coffee sounds great. Same place tomorrow evening. Then I called Blackwell. I'm ready to make some changes, I told him. Starting with how we handle Daniel. What did you have in mind? He asked. It's time to show him exactly who I've become, not just what I've inherited. As I spoke the words, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time since discovering my inheritance, I wasn't just Catherine Turner's granddaughter or Daniel's ex-wife. I was becoming Rebecca Turner, a force to be reckoned with. And Daniel had no idea what was coming. The morning of my coffee date with Noah, I woke to an urgent call from Elaine. Rebecca, you need to come to the office immediately, her voice tense. There's been a development. When I arrived at Hayes Development headquarters, the executive floor buzzed with unusual activity. Security personnel I'd never seen before stood outside the conference room where Blackwell, Elaine, and several board members waited with grim expressions. What's happening? I asked, my stomach nodding. Blackwell slid a tablet across the table. On screen was a financial news website with the headline, Hayes Development Heir Emerges. Catherine Turner's hidden granddaughter takes control of $600 million empire. Below was a photograph of me entering the building yesterday. That's not all, Elaine said, swiping to another article. This just broke an hour ago. The headline made my blood run cold. Hayes' heir's ex-husband claims fraud. She hid assets during divorce proceedings. The article quoted Daniel extensively, painting me as a calculating manipulator who had deliberately concealed my inheritance during our divorce to defraud him of his rightful share. This is absurd, I whispered. I didn't even know about the inheritance during our divorce. Daniel has filed an emergency petition with the court, Blackwell explained. He's claiming your grandmother's death occurred during your marriage, making the inheritance marital property subject to division. Can he do that? He can try, Blackwell said. We'll fight it, but this will get messy and public. Fast. My phone buzzed with notifications, journalists requesting comments, old acquaintances suddenly remembering our friendship, and a text from Daniel. Should have taken my offer yesterday. Still time to settle this privately. Dinner tonight. The thought of sitting across from him, watching him smirk as he leveraged my past trauma against me, made me physically ill. There's something else, Marcus said, entering the room with a folder. We've discovered how Daniel learned about the inheritance so quickly. He placed photographs on the table, surveillance images of Daniel meeting with someone I recognized immediately. Elizabeth Chambers, my grandmother's former assistant. Elizabeth was terminated 6 months before your grandmother's death, Elaine explained. Catherine discovered she had been selling company information. What does she have to do with Daniel? Marcus placed another photo on the table. Daniel and Elizabeth, clearly intimate. We believe their relationship began before your divorce, Marcus said gently. Elizabeth knew about your inheritance long before you did. The realization hit me like a physical blow. He knew. All along, he knew. The pieces clicked into horrifying place. Daniel hadn't left me because of the affairs or because he'd fallen out of love. He'd left because Elizabeth had told him about my inheritance, but they'd miscalculated the timing. They thought I'd receive the money immediately after Grant's death, not after a long probate process. When no money appeared, he'd initiated the divorce quickly, planning to come back into my life once the inheritance cleared. The affairs, the cruelty, the financial abuse, all deliberate tactics to break me down, make me desperate for his return when he decided it was time. There's more, Blackwell said hesitantly. Elizabeth claims your grandmother wanted Daniel to receive a portion of the company. She alleges Catherine changed her will under undue influence from me and other advisors. That's ridiculous, I said. Gran despised Daniel. We know that, Elaine assured me. But they're creating a narrative for the media and the courts. They're trying to pressure you into a settlement. I thought about the journals I'd read, about Gran's careful observations of Daniel's character flaws. Gran would have documented her concerns about Daniel. She documented everything. Blackwell and Elaine exchanged looks. Many of your grandmother's personal papers were stored at her main residence, Blackwell said carefully. There was a break-in last night. My heart stopped. The lake house? But I was there. Not the lake house, Elaine clarified. Your childhood home. But we sold that house after Gran died. Daniel insisted. The implication hung in the air. Daniel had pushed to sell that house because he knew, or Elizabeth had told him, that important documents were hidden there. Who bought it? I asked, already suspecting the answer. A shell company, Marcus confirmed. We've traced it back to Elizabeth's brother. I felt physically ill. The home where I'd grown up, where Gran had raised me, had been targeted specifically to obtain evidence that could have protected me. What does this mean for the inheritance? I asked. Nothing legally, Blackwell assured me. Your grandmother's estate planning is bulletproof. But from a public relations perspective, it's a nightmare, Elaine finished. The board is concerned about company stability. Hayes Development stock dropped 8% after this morning's news. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Noah. Just saw the news. Are you okay? Still on for coffee if you need to talk. I stared at the message, suddenly suspicious of his timing. Had Noah recognized me at the cafe? Had he approached me knowing who I was? Rebecca, Blackwell's voice pulled me back. We need a strategy. The board is recommending a public statement. For the next 3 hours, we crafted press releases, prepared legal responses, and developed a crisis management plan. By afternoon, my head throbbed with tension. You should get some rest, Elaine suggested. Tomorrow will be challenging. On my way out, I passed a television in the lobby playing a business news channel. Daniel's face filled the screen as he gave an interview. Rebecca and I built a life together, he said, his expression perfectly arranged to convey sincerity. I supported her through her grandmother's illness while working 60-hour weeks. All I'm asking for is fairness. Catherine Turner treated me like a son. The blatant lie made me freeze in place. Staff members glanced at me uncomfortably as Daniel continued his performance. Rebecca has always struggled with financial responsibility. I'm concerned about her ability to manage such a significant company without proper guidance. This isn't just about our marriage, it's about protecting Catherine's legacy. Security quickly escorted me to the elevator, but the damage was done. I'd seen the doubt in people's eyes, employees wondering if their new boss was the unstable woman Daniel was describing. When I reached the penthouse, another shock awaited. Mrs. Patel, my kind neighbor from my old apartment, sat in the living room. Mrs. Patel? How did you get here? Her warm smile didn't reach her eyes. Your ex-husband was kind enough to bring me. Daniel stepped out from the kitchen, twirling a wine glass. Rebecca, darling. I thought you might want to see a friendly face after such a stressful day. My security team looked confused. He arrived with the older lady, one explained. Said they were expected. Mrs. Patel patted my hand. Daniel explained everything, dear. How the money has been causing problems between you. How you've been unwell since the inheritance. I stared at her in disbelief, then at Daniel, who smiled with practiced concern. I was just telling Mrs. Patel how worried we all are about you. The pressure of suddenly managing such wealth can be overwhelming for someone with no experience. The deliberate gaslighting strategy was clear: isolate me, make my allies doubt my stability, create a narrative of incompetence. He was using Mrs. Patel's genuine concern against me. Mrs. Patel, I said carefully, would you mind if Daniel showed you the view from the terrace while I freshen up? Once they stepped outside, I whispered urgently to Marcus, get Blackwell on the phone. Now. Within minutes, Blackwell's voice came through the speaker. Rebecca? What's wrong? Daniel is here with my former neighbor. He's spinning some story about me being unstable. I need him out, but I don't want to frighten Mrs. Patel. Let me handle this, Blackwell said firmly. 20 minutes later, Blackwell himself arrived with 2 police officers. Daniel's smug expression vanished instantly. Daniel Wellington, one officer asked. We need to speak with you regarding allegations of corporate espionage. This is ridiculous, Daniel sputtered. I'm here visiting my ex-wife. Mr. Wellington, we have a warrant to search your residence and electronic devices in connection with stolen proprietary information from Hayes Development Corporation, the officer continued. Mrs. Patel looked between us, confusion evident. Rebecca, what's happening? Daniel isn't who he pretends to be, I said gently. He's been trying to manipulate his way into my inheritance. But he said you were unwell, that you needed intervention. Mrs. Patel, Blackwell interjected, Mr. Wellington is currently under investigation for multiple felonies, including conspiracy to commit fraud. As the officers escorted Daniel out, he hissed at me, this isn't over. I know things about your precious grandmother she never wanted you to discover. When they were gone, Mrs. Patel grabbed my hands. I'm so sorry, child. He came to my apartment, said he was worried about you. I truly thought I was helping. It's not your fault, I assured her, though inside I felt violated. Daniel had weaponized the one genuine relationship I'd maintained after our divorce. After arranging for Mrs. Patel to be taken home, I collapsed onto the sofa, emotionally drained. My coffee date with Noah was in an hour, but I couldn't bear the thought of more potential manipulation. I texted him, need to reschedule. Not a good day. His response came quickly, no problem. Take care of yourself. Here when you need a friend. Just a friend. Simple, uncomplicated. Or was it? How could I trust anyone's motives now? My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Hello. Rebecca Turner, a woman's voice asked. This is Elizabeth Chambers. My blood ran cold. What do you want? To meet. There are things about your grandmother you don't know, things she deliberately kept from you. I'm not interested in anything you have to say. Not even about your parents' death? Elizabeth asked. Not even about why Catherine really removed herself from public life? It wasn't just to raise you, Rebecca. Don't call me again, I said, ending the call. But Elizabeth's words had planted a seed of doubt. What if there was more to Grand's story than I knew? I returned to the lake house that evening, drawn to the journals I'd discovered. This time, I searched for entries around the time of my parents' death. Most were business-focused, but then I found it, a journal with a black cover, hidden behind the others. The first entry, dated 1 week after my parents' car accident, made my hands shake. The investigation confirms my worst fears. The brake lines were deliberately cut. This was no accident. Someone wanted James and Eliza dead. I must protect Rebecca at all costs. No one can know she's my heir. No one can know what really happened. I will disappear from public life not just for her childhood, but for her safety. I dropped the journal in shock. My parents had been murdered. Gran had hidden me away not just to give me a normal childhood, but to protect my life. As I frantically flipped through the black journal, more horrifying truths emerged. Gran had suspected her former business partner, Victor Whitman, of orchestrating my parents' deaths after my father had discovered financial irregularities in the company. The final entry, dated just weeks before Gran's death, read, Rebecca is dating Daniel Wellington. Initial background checks show concerning connections. His uncle worked for Victor's holding company in the 90s. This cannot be coincidence. I've placed surveillance on Daniel. If my suspicions are confirmed, I must find a way to protect Rebecca without telling her the truth. The knowledge would destroy her. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Found her journals, didn't you? There's more. Victor Whitman is my father. Daniel has been working for him from the beginning. Meet me tomorrow if you want the full story. Elizabeth. Attached was a photo of my parents, one I'd never seen before, standing with a younger Gran and a man I assumed was Victor Whitman. Everything I thought I knew crumbled around me. My parents' death wasn't an accident. My marriage wasn't a failed relationship. It was part of a decades-long vendetta against my family. And Daniel wasn't just after my money. He was finishing what Victor Whitman had started. My phone rang again, Noah. Against my better judgment, I answered. Rebecca? I know you said you needed space, but I'm outside your building. There's something you need to see. Noah, this isn't a good time. It's about Daniel Wellington and Victor Whitman. Please, Rebecca. You're in danger. My blood turned to ice. How did Noah know those names? Was everyone in my life part of this conspiracy? Security won't let you up, I said cautiously. I'm not trying to come up. You need to come down. Please. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Against every instinct, I told Marcus to escort me downstairs. When the elevator doors opened to the lobby, I saw Noah standing there, with Daniel's unconscious body on the floor beside him. He was waiting outside your building, Noah explained, a cut above his eye bleeding freely. He attacked me when I approached. Rebecca, I need to tell you who I really am. My real name isn't Noah Chin, he said, eyes locked on mine as security guards handcuffed Daniel's unconscious form. It's Noah Hayes. The last name hit me like a physical blow. Hayes, my grandmother's family name. That's impossible, I whispered. Noah's expression was pained. I'm James Hayes' son. Your father's son. We're half-siblings, Rebecca. The world tilted sideways. Security guards moved to steady me as I stumbled back. My father didn't have another child, I insisted. Gran would have told me. Catherine didn't know, Noah said. Not until shortly before she died. I was born to Lisa Chin, my father's research assistant. They had a brief relationship before he met your mother. Blackwell emerged from the elevator, his face grave. I see you two have finally met. You knew. I turned to him, betrayal cutting deep. You knew I had a brother and you kept it from me? I only discovered Noah's existence when Catherine did during her final investigations into Victor Whitman, Blackwell explained. She was still verifying his identity when she passed. Noah's face bore a haunting familiarity I couldn't believe I'd missed. My father's eyes, my grandmother's determined jaw. I've been tracking Daniel for years, Noah continued. After my mother died, I found letters from James, your father, our father. He never knew about me, but my mother kept everything. When I researched him and discovered what happened to our parents. So the bookstore meeting was a setup, I said flatly. Coffee with Noah, just another manipulation. The meeting was deliberate, Noah admitted. But not to harm you. To protect you. Victor Whitman has been watching you your entire life, waiting for Catherine to reveal you as her heir. When she died, he accelerated his plans. By sending Daniel to marry me, I whispered, the full horror of my 6-year marriage washing over me. Was anything real? Noah looked away. Daniel was specifically chosen because of his psychological profile. Victor needed someone charming enough to win your trust, but narcissistic enough to be controlled through his own ambition. I thought I'd hit rock bottom before, but this revelation carved new depths of betrayal. My marriage had been an orchestrated sham from the beginning, a long-term operation to infiltrate my life. Why? I demanded. Why not just kill me like they killed our parents? Because Catherine made it too complicated, Blackwell interjected. After your parents' death, she restructured everything. The only way to control Hayes' development was through you, first by marriage, then by financial claim. We moved to a secure room in the building's sub-basement while Daniel was taken into custody. There, Noah and Blackwell revealed the full, horrifying scope of Victor Whitman's vendetta against my family. Your father discovered Victor was laundering money through Hayes' development subsidiaries, Noah explained. When he threatened to expose him, Victor arranged the accident. Catherine knew immediately but couldn't prove it. So she disappeared with you, Blackwell continued. She erased all public connections between herself and her granddaughter. She built a fortress around you legally, financially, personally. But she couldn't protect me from Daniel, I said bitterly. Noah's expression darkened. By the time I discovered who you were and what Daniel represented, you were already married. I've spent the last 4 years gathering evidence against Victor and Daniel. My head spun with questions. If you're my brother, why approach me romantically at the cafe? Noah looked genuinely horrified. Romantically? No, I just needed to make contact without alerting your security team. I had no idea you interpreted it that way. The misunderstanding would have been almost comical if everything else wasn't so devastating. I'd been suspicious of the one person actually trying to help me. What happens now? I asked. We need to move you immediately, Blackwell said. Daniel's arrest changes the timeline. If Victor thinks his operation is compromised, he'll take direct action. I'm not running, I said firmly. This is my company, my legacy. Rebecca, Noah began, but my phone buzzed with an incoming call, Elaine. I need to take this, I said, answering. Elaine, I'm in the building. There's been a situation. Rebecca, don't trust Blackwell. Her voice was tight with fear. Get out now. Meet me at the secondary office. Come alone. The call ended abruptly. I looked up to find Noah and Blackwell watching me intently. Elaine says not to trust you, I told Blackwell, moving toward the door. She wants me to meet her. Rebecca, wait, Noah started forward, but Blackwell stopped him. Let her make her own choice, Blackwell said quietly. Just like Catherine would have wanted. The implicit trust in his voice made me hesitate. What aren't you telling me? We've suspected for months that someone high in the company is working with Victor, Noah said carefully. We just couldn't confirm who. You think it's Elaine? The thought was almost as devastating as discovering Daniel's betrayal. Elaine had been my grandmother's right hand for decades. I think you need to be very careful, Blackwell said. Catherine trusted few people completely, and Elaine joined the company after Victor's departure. I made a split-second decision. I'll meet her, but not alone. You'll follow at a distance. 30 minutes later, I entered the backup executive suite in a building Hayes Development owned across town. The floor was eerily silent, the usual security absent. Elaine? I called, moving cautiously through the darkened reception area. A side door opened, and Elaine emerged, looking harried. Thank God you're here. We don't have much time. Time for what? I asked, maintaining distance between us. To get you out of the country, she said, moving to a wall safe behind a painting. Catherine prepared contingencies. There's an identity package, accounts they can't trace. Why would I need to leave? Elaine turned, her expression incredulous. Because Victor Whitman has judges and police on his payroll. Daniel's arrest won't stick. And once he's free, they'll come after you directly. She removed a file from the safe. Catherine knew this day might come. Did she know I had a brother? The question made Elaine freeze momentarily. Noah found you. Good. We'll need him too. Her response struck me as odd. How did you know I meant Noah? A slight smile curved Elaine's lips. Catherine told me, of course. We discussed contingencies for both her grandchildren. The hairs on my neck stood up. According to both Noah and Blackwell, my grandmother had only discovered Noah's existence shortly before her death, too late for elaborate contingency planning. When did Gran tell you about Noah? I asked, subtly reaching for my phone. Early on, after your parents died. She wanted to protect both of you from Victor. The lie confirmed my worst fears. I backed toward the door. Gran only discovered Noah existed at the end of her life. You never knew until now. Elaine's friendly demeanor evaporated. Clever girl. I always told Victor you were sharper than Daniel gave you credit for. My blood ran cold as she reached into her jacket and withdrew a small pistol. You've worked for Victor all along, I realized. Over 30 years, she confirmed. I was already his when I joined Hayes Development. Catherine suspected everyone except those closest to her. She trusted you completely. Her only weakness, Elaine agreed. Though she became suspicious toward the end. That's why we had to accelerate our timeline. The implication made me physically ill. You killed her. Elaine didn't deny it. Cancer is such a convenient diagnosis for certain toxins. Slow-acting, nearly untraceable. Why not kill me too? I demanded, playing for time, praying Noah and Blackwell were monitoring the situation. Because the structure Catherine created requires you alive, at least until everything transfers properly. Dead, your estate goes into probate for years. Alive and declared incompetent, however. She shrugged. A cooperative guardian can do wonders. Daniel, I whispered. He failed in his assignment to maintain control through marriage. But a reconciliation, followed by your unfortunate mental breakdown. She gestured with the gun. Victor still gets what he wants, control of Hayes Development. You murdered my parents. You poisoned my grandmother. You orchestrated my marriage to a man who emotionally destroyed me, I said, each revelation like a physical blow. Why does Victor hate my family so much? Hate? Elaine laughed. This isn't about hate. It's about what Catherine took from him. She didn't take anything. They were partners. They were more than partners, Elaine corrected. They were married. The revelation struck like lightning. That's a lie. Before your time, of course. A brief, passionate union in the early days of the company. It ended when Catherine discovered Victor's other businesses, the ones that made real money. Illegal businesses, I said. Profitable businesses, Elaine countered. When they divorced, Catherine rewrote the company bylaws, slowly pushing Victor out of what he helped build. Everything he's done since has been to reclaim what was rightfully his. By murdering his way through my family? Business is business, she said coldly. Now, we're going to walk downstairs where a car is waiting. You're having an emotional episode. I'm taking you somewhere to rest. I'm not going anywhere with you. You don't have a choice. She raised the gun. Victor prefers you alive, but he'll settle for dead if necessary. The lawyers will figure it out either way. I needed to stall longer. If Victor was married to Gran, that means he's Noah's step-grandfather. Does he know that? Something flickered in Elaine's eyes, uncertainty. Noah Hayes doesn't exist. He's a fabrication. You haven't met him, have you? I realized. You don't know what he looks like. It doesn't matter. Victor's people will find him too. They've been trying for years, came Noah's voice from behind her. They haven't succeeded yet. Elaine spun, gun raised, but Noah was faster. The sound of a taser crackled through the room as Elaine collapsed. Security flooded the room, followed by Blackwell and police officers. As they secured Elaine, I sagged against the wall, the weight of each revelation crushing me. I recorded everything, Noah said, holding up his phone. She confessed to Gran's murder, to working for Victor. We have her. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollowed out. How much more, Noah? How many more betrayals are buried in my family history? His expression was grim. There's something else you need to see. 2 hours later, I sat in Gran's secret study at the lake house, staring at documents Noah had recovered from a hidden safe, documents Gran had kept separate from everything else. She was gathering evidence against Victor for decades, Noah explained. Building a case methodically, waiting for the right moment. The evidence was damning, not just against Victor, but against Hayes Development itself. Environmental violations covered up in developing countries. Indigenous communities displaced for lucrative mining rights. Political bribes funneled through charitable foundations. Gran knew about all of this? I asked, sickened. She discovered most of it after forcing Victor out, Noah said. Some of it she initiated herself before her moral awakening. Moral awakening? I repeated bitterly. She built an empire on corruption, Noah. And spent the last 20 years trying to make it right, he countered, showing me another set of files. These are the remediation projects she funded anonymously. The communities she rebuilt. The whistleblower funds she established. I flipped through evidence of Gran's attempts at redemption, billions spent undoing damage, restructuring company practices, establishing ethical guidelines. Her last journal entry, Noah said, handing me a book I hadn't found before. The night before she was hospitalized for the last time. Gran's familiar handwriting, shakier than I remembered, filled the page. I feel Victor's hand in this illness. If I'm right, I won't see Rebecca take her rightful place. I've tried to cleanse the company of its sins, Victor's and my own. I've tried to prepare her for the burden that comes with this legacy. But there is one truth I haven't faced. Perhaps Hayes Development doesn't deserve to survive. Perhaps the greatest gift I could give Rebecca is the courage to dismantle what Victor and I built. Not for vengeance, but for justice. To truly heal what we broke. The journal fell from my trembling hands. She wanted me to destroy her life's work? She wanted you to have the choice she never gave herself, Noah corrected. The choice to do what's right, no matter the cost. As I tried to process this final revelation, my phone lit up with breaking news alerts. Someone had leaked documents to the press, decades of Hayes Development's darkest secrets exposed for all to see. The company's stock was in freefall. Victor's contingency plan, Noah realized. If he can't have the company, he'll destroy it. I scrolled through the reports, watching my inheritance disintegrate in real time. Corporate partners distancing themselves. Calls for criminal investigations. Board members resigning. Everything is gone, I whispered. Not everything, Noah said. Not the truth. Not the choice Gran wanted you to have. My phone rang Blackwell. Rebecca, the board has called an emergency meeting. They're voting to remove you as CEO to distance the company from the scandal. I've been trying to block it, but with the leaks. When I hung up, I felt strangely calm despite losing everything, my inheritance, my company, my family's legacy, all crumbling around me. What will you do? Noah asked. I looked at Gran's journal, at her final confession, her final wish. For the first time since discovering my inheritance, I felt clear-headed. Exactly what she hoped I would, I decided. I'm going to tear it all down and build something better from the ashes. As I spoke the words, I felt a strange lightness, as if by losing everything, I'd finally found myself. First, I said, picking up my phone, I need to make some calls. Noah watched me curiously. To who? To every journalist who's ever investigated Hayes Development. It's time they heard the full story, not Victor's version, not Gran's version. My version. That will destroy any chance of salvaging the company, he warned. Good, I said simply. Some things don't deserve to be salvaged. 3 days later, I stood outside the Hayes Development headquarters for the last time. The building that had once represented my inheritance now felt like a monument to corruption. Protesters lined the street, calling for justice for communities harmed by the company's practices. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. You've destroyed everything. Victor is coming for you personally now. No one can protect you. The threat that would have terrified me a week ago now felt empty. I had already lost everything, my inheritance, my family's legacy, even my identity as Catherine Turner's heir. What else could they take? As I walked away from the building, a black car pulled alongside me. The window lowered to reveal Victor Whitman himself, a distinguished man in his 70s with cold, calculating eyes. "You could have had everything," he said. "Now you have nothing. Was it worth it?" I studied the man who had orchestrated my parents' murder, my grandmother's poisoning, and my sham marriage. "I have the truth," I replied. "And something you never will." "What's that?" he asked with mocking curiosity. "Peace," I said simply, and walked away. That night, alone in a modest hotel room, my assets frozen by court order, my name synonymous with corporate scandal, my future uncertain, I should have felt defeated. Instead, I felt strangely free. My phone rang with an unlisted number. "Hello, Miss Turner," an unfamiliar voice said. "My name is Agent Sawyer with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We've been building a case against Victor Whitman for years. After your press conference today, we think you might be able to help us." For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. "I'll tell you everything I know," I promised. "There's someone else who wants to speak with you," the agent said. The phone rustled as it changed hands. Then a voice I thought I'd never hear again came through the line. "Rebecca? It's me." My heart stopped. "Gran? Rebecca? Can you hear me?" The voice was unmistakable, the same voice that had read me bedtime stories, that had comforted me after my parents' death, that I had believed was silenced forever. "This isn't possible," I whispered, sinking to the floor of my hotel room. "I identified your body. I buried you." "No, sweetheart. You buried someone, but it wasn't me." Gran's voice was weaker than I remembered, but undeniably hers. "I'm so sorry for everything you've been through. Where have you been?" My voice broke. "Why did you let me believe you were dead? Do you have any idea what I know everything, Rebecca. I've watched it all from a distance, and it's torn me apart not to reach out to you." The FBI agent's voice cut in. "Ms. Turner, we need to move this conversation in person. We're sending a car to your location. Pack nothing. Tell no one. Your grandmother will explain everything when you arrive." 90 minutes later, I was escorted into a nondescript government facility outside the city. Security checkpoints led me deeper into the building until I reached a medical wing where a frail figure sat in a wheelchair by the window. Gran looked both familiar and foreign, thinner, grayer, but her eyes lit with recognition as I entered. When she extended her arms, I fell into them without hesitation, months of grief and betrayal collapsing into this single moment. "How?" I finally managed to ask, pulling back to study her face. "Who did I bury?" "Marguerite Pierce," Gran explained. "My housekeeper who died of natural causes 3 days before Victor's people poisoned my tea. We had similar builds, and the FBI helped arrange the switch while I was hospitalized." Agent Sawyer stepped forward. "We've been building a case against Victor Whitman for decades. Your grandmother approached us after finding evidence linking him to your parents' deaths." "Why not just arrest him then?" I demanded. "Because Victor is untouchable through conventional means," Gran explained. "His network extends into federal agencies, judicial systems, even foreign governments. We needed to draw out his entire operation, every person, every connection, every hidden asset." "So you used me as bait," I said, the realization like ice in my veins. "You let me marry Daniel knowing what he was." Gran's face crumpled with guilt. "By the time we confirmed Daniel's connection to Victor, you were already engaged. I tried to warn you without revealing why. You could have told me everything." I stood, anger overtaking my initial shock. About Victor, about Hayes Development's corruption, about Noah. "Noah was a complication we didn't anticipate," Agent Sawyer interjected. "He found Catherine independently after investigating his father's death." "Is he really my brother?" "Yes," Gran confirmed. "James never knew about him. I only discovered Noah's existence after my death, when he approached the FBI with evidence against Victor." I paced the small room, trying to process these revelations. "So while I was struggling to survive after my divorce, while Daniel was destroying me psychologically, while I thought I'd lost everything, you were alive, watching it all happen?" The pain in Gran's eyes was answer enough. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done, Rebecca. Harder than building the company, harder than losing your father. Watching you suffer and not being able to intervene. But you did intervene," I realized. The inheritance timing. The evidence against Daniel. That was all you. Gran nodded. I worked with Thomas to ensure the inheritance would only come to you after the divorce was final. We knew Daniel would reveal his true nature once he believed you had nothing left to offer him. What about Elaine's confession? She said she poisoned you. She believed she did, Agent Sawyer explained. Victor kept his operatives compartmentalized. Elaine administered what she thought was a fatal toxin, but we had already switched Catherine's medication. We needed Elaine to believe she had succeeded. My mind raced to keep up. The documents that were leaked to the press, exposing Hayes Development's corruption. That was me, Gran admitted quietly. Not Victor's contingency plan. Mine. I stared at her in disbelief. You destroyed your own company? I destroyed what should never have existed in the first place, she corrected. Hayes Development was built on blood money, Rebecca. Victor and I both have innocent lives on our hands. The difference is, I couldn't live with it anymore. The weight of this confession hung between us. What happens now? I finally asked. Agent Sawyer stepped forward. Victor Whitman was arrested an hour ago, along with 17 of his associates in 4 countries. His offshore accounts have been frozen. His corporate empire is collapsing. And Daniel? Singing like a canary to reduce his sentence, Sawyer said with satisfaction. He's implicated Victor in your parents' murder, provided evidence of money laundering through 7 countries, and detailed the surveillance operation against you. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. So it's over. Not exactly, Gran said, her expression grave. There's still one more thing we need from you, Rebecca. The most difficult thing I could ever ask. She gestured to Agent Sawyer, who placed a thick folder on the table between us. What is this? I asked, not reaching for it. Evidence that could put me in prison for the rest of my life, Gran said simply. Environmental crimes in South America. Bribes to government officials in Asia. Violations of international law that have no statute of limitations. I stared at her, uncomprehending. You want me to turn you in? I want you to choose justice over family, she said. Just as I asked in my journal. That was real? Not just part of the setup. Every word was genuine, she assured me. I've spent 20 years trying to secretly right my wrongs, but some debts can't be paid from the shadows. Agent Sawyer cleared his throat. We're prepared to offer your grandmother immunity in exchange for her testimony against Victor and others. But we need your cooperation as well. My cooperation? You control what remains of the Hayes fortune through trusts that, even we can't access, Gran explained. Money that could be used to directly compensate communities harmed by our operations. I looked between them. You want me to give away my inheritance? What's left of it, Gran confirmed. About $300 million after the stock collapse. The situation's cruel irony wasn't lost on me. After believing I had nothing, I discovered an enormous fortune. After accepting the loss of that fortune, I was being asked to voluntarily surrender what remained. If I refuse? I asked. Then I'll turn myself in without immunity, Gran said firmly. I'll plead guilty to all charges. You keep the money, and I spend whatever years I have left in federal prison. The choice she'd placed before me was impossible. Support my grandmother's immunity by surrendering my inheritance, or keep the money and lose her to prison. Why are you doing this to me? I whispered. Because wealth without purpose corrupts, she replied. Because I failed to make this choice 30 years ago, and that failure cost your parents their lives. Because I need to know that breaking the cycle of corruption matters more to you than wealth. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. What would happen to the money? It would establish a trust for reparations, Agent Sawyer explained. Independently administered, with no connection to you or your grandmother. And Hayes Development? It's already finished, Gran said. The board filed for bankruptcy protection this morning. The subsidiaries will be sold off. The name will disappear. I turned back to face them. And what about me? What happens to Rebecca Turner when this is over? That's entirely up to you, Gran said. For the first time in your life, your identity won't be defined by family wealth or family secrets. You'll be free to become whoever you want to be. Freedom. After weeks of fighting to claim my inheritance, the prospect of walking away from it completely should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something unexpected stirring in my chest, possibility. I want to speak with Noah first, I said. Noah arrived an hour later, clearly unsurprised to find Gran alive. You knew, I accused. Not at first, he admitted. Not until after Daniel's arrest. I was as shocked as you. What would you do? I asked him. If you were me? He considered the question carefully. When I discovered who our father was, I had two choices: pursue justice or pursue wealth. I chose justice. I've never regretted it. Even though you lived in poverty while I had everything? I had purpose, he corrected. That's worth more than wealth. I looked between Noah and Gran, two people who had made vastly different choices with the same legacy. If I do this, I said slowly, I want conditions. Gran straightened in her wheelchair. Name them. Full disclosure about everything, no more secrets, no more manipulations. I want to be part of designing the reparations program. And I want assurance that the communities harmed by Hayes development will receive direct compensation, not just symbolic gestures. Done, Agent Sawyer said. And one more thing, I added. I want Daniel to know it was my choice to give away the money. That even when I had everything he wanted, I chose to walk away from it freely. Gran's eyes shone with a mixture of pride and tears. Is that your decision? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of generations of corruption, greed, and redemption on my shoulders. Yes, I said finally. I choose justice over wealth. I choose to break the cycle. The next morning, I signed dozens of documents transferring control of my inheritance to the newly established Hayes Reparations Trust. With each signature, I felt a piece of my old identity falling away: the heiress, the victim, the pawn in a decades-long game. When the final paper was signed, Agent Sawyer shook my hand. You've done something remarkable today, Miss Turner. What happens now? I asked. Now you get to disappear for a while, he said. For your safety, until Victor's case goes to trial. Witness protection? More like a paid sabbatical, he corrected. The government owes you that much at least. That evening, as I packed the few belongings I'd accumulated since losing everything, I found the bookmark Noah had given me at the cafe, the Robert Frost quote about the road less traveled. It seemed like a lifetime ago. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Heard you gave it all away. You really are nothing now. D. For the first time, Daniel's attempt to hurt me made me smile. He still didn't understand. By choosing to walk away from the fortune, I'd found something he could never take from me: freedom from the past. I typed back a simple response. And that has made all the difference. Then I blocked his number for the last time. As I prepared to leave my old life behind, Gran asked to speak with me privately. There's one thing I haven't told you, she said when we were alone. Something I've kept from everyone, including the FBI. My heart sank. More secrets? She shook her head. Not a secret: insurance. She pressed a small key into my palm. Safe deposit box at First International Bank in Geneva. Inside is evidence against people even more powerful than Victor: politicians, judges, corporate leaders who enabled our operations. Why are you giving this to me? Because power corrupts, Rebecca. Even the power of justice. If the FBI buries Victor's case, if his associates walk free, if the reparations are blocked, use this. It's the nuclear option. I stared at the small key. More destruction. Or the promise that justice will be served, she countered. The choice to use it or not will be yours alone. As I slipped the key into my pocket, I realized what Gran was really giving me: trust. After a lifetime of secrets and manipulations, she was entrusting me with the final decision about how this story would end. The next morning, I stood at the airport with Noah, preparing to board a flight to a destination I'd only been told after arrival. Ready? He asked, offering his hand. I looked back at the city skyline one last time. Somewhere in that landscape, Victor Whitman sat in a cell. Daniel faced years of testimony and eventual imprisonment. Elaine and others awaited trial. The Hayes Development logo was being removed from buildings across the country. The empire had fallen. The truth had emerged. Justice was in progress. And I was free. Yes, I said, taking Noah's hand. I'm ready. As the plane lifted off, carrying me away from everything I'd ever known, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before the divorce: hope. Not because of what I'd gained, but because of what I'd chosen to lose. 6 months disappeared like smoke. I settled into a quiet life in a coastal town in New Zealand under the name Rachel Thompson. The government-provided cottage overlooked the Pacific, isolated enough for security, but connected enough to prevent complete isolation. Noah lived in a similar property 20 minutes away, close enough for regular contact, far enough for independence. Gran remained in protective custody, her testimony against Victor becoming the foundation of what the media called the prosecution of the decade. From my distant sanctuary, I watched the Hayes development empire crumble and Victor's criminal network unravel through carefully curated news reports provided by Agent Sawyer. My new life felt borrowed, peaceful but impermanent. I took long walks on empty beaches, read books I'd never had time for, and slowly rebuilt my sense of self beyond the identities that had been thrust upon me: daughter, wife, divorcee, heiress, victim. You seem calmer, Noah observed during one of our weekly dinners. More centered. I'm just existing, I admitted. For the first time in my life, no one expects anything from me. But the key Gran had given me, the nuclear option, weighed in my mind daily. I'd hidden it in a hollow book on my nightstand, unable to forget its presence or its potential. On the morning marking exactly 6 months since my disappearance, a secure message arrived from Agent Sawyer. Victor's case facing unexpected challenges. Judge Harrington considering dismissal of key evidence. Need you back for additional testimony. Transport arranged for tomorrow. Judge Samuel Harrington. The name triggered a memory. I'd seen it in Gran's journals, listed among Victor's high-level connections. If he was presiding over Victor's case, something had gone very wrong with the prosecution. I called Noah immediately. Have you seen Sawyer's message? Just now, he confirmed. Something feels off. Harrington was in Gran's files, he's connected to Victor. I know, Noah said grimly. I've been monitoring the case through my own channels. The FBI's been shut out of key proceedings. Department of Justice officials have been reassigned. Victor's reach extends further than anyone anticipated. A chill ran down my spine. They're going to let him walk. It's worse than that. If Victor goes free, everyone who testified against him becomes a target, including Catherine and you. The realization hit like a physical blow. This was always a possibility, wasn't it? Gran gave me that key because she knew the system might protect him in the end. Noah was silent for a long moment. Rebecca, there's something I haven't told you. My heart sank. More secrets. Not secrets, contingencies, he said carefully. Catherine and I prepared for this scenario. The evidence against Victor isn't just in a Swiss bank vault. What are you saying? I'm saying we need to meet, not at either of our houses. The beach at midnight. Come alone and bring nothing electronic. The cryptic request left me uneasy, but I agreed. After disconnecting, I pulled out the hollow book containing Gran's key, studying it in the morning light. What was in that safety deposit box that warranted such precaution? And what did Noah know that he couldn't say over secure lines? As darkness fell, another message arrived, this one from Gran through the secure channel. Don't return. Trust no one. The key is everything. Her warning amplified my growing suspicion that something was very wrong with Agent Sawyer's recall request. If we were needed for legitimate testimony, why would Gran warn me to stay away? At midnight, I made my way down the deserted beach, the sound of waves masking my footsteps. Noah was waiting by a cluster of rocks, his face partially illuminated by moonlight. We're compromised, he said without preamble. Sawyer's been removed from the case. The person who contacted us is working for someone else. Victor? Possibly. Or someone even higher up who wants what Catherine gave you. The key? What the key accesses, Noah corrected. It's not just evidence against Victor's associates. It's evidence against people who've spent decades above suspicion: Supreme Court justices, cabinet secretaries, intelligence directors. People who could make Victor's case disappear with a phone call. My mind raced to catch up. If they know about the key. They've always known about it, Noah interrupted. Catherine built her insurance policy in plain sight. What they don't know is the access protocol or location. Only you have that now. I pulled the key from my pocket. It's just a safe deposit key. Noah shook his head. It's much more than that. The notches on that key contain encoded information, account numbers, passwords, GPS coordinates. Catherine designed it as a physical access key that can't be duplicated without precise measurements. Why would Gran give this to me instead of you? I asked. You're the one who's been fighting Victor for years. Noah's expression shifted subtly. Because you're the only one Catherine trusts completely. Not even you? I asked, suddenly wary. Not even me, he confirmed. And she was right not to. The admission hung between us, carried away by the ocean breeze. What aren't you telling me, Noah? He took a deep breath. I didn't find Catherine through investigation. I was sent to find her by Victor Whitman. The revelation hit like a physical blow. You work for Victor? I did, he admitted. Initially. Victor discovered I was James Hayes' biological son 15 years ago. He approached me with evidence about my father's death, promising justice if I helped him locate Catherine and recover certain documents. My hand instinctively closed around the key. So everything was a lie. The bookstore meeting, the brother connection. No, Noah said firmly. The meeting was orchestrated, yes. But everything changed once I actually found Catherine. What happened? She showed me the truth, not just about Victor's crimes, but about my own manipulation. Victor hadn't told me he ordered my father's murder. Catherine had evidence of everything, including communications between Victor and his operatives discussing James Hayes' accident. I struggled to process this new betrayal. So you switched sides. I chose truth over vengeance, Noah corrected. Catherine gave me a chance to help bring Victor down legitimately, through legal channels. Why are you telling me this now? Because the legal channels have failed, he said grimly. And because you need to understand what that key really represents and who will come after you to get it. A flashlight beam swept the beach in the distance, security patrol. We need to move, Noah urged, leading me away from the light. Back to your place. Pack essentials only. We have less than an hour. An hour until what? Until they realize the real Agent Sawyer is incapacitated and the message we received came from someone else. Until they track our locations and send extraction teams. Extraction teams? I repeated, the reality of our situation finally sinking in. Noah, who are these people? The same people who helped Victor build his empire. The same people who looked the other way when Hayes' development violated international law. People who've spent decades above accountability. As we hurried back to my cottage, a helicopter thundered overhead, searchlights sweeping the landscape. Too late, Noah muttered, pulling me into the shadow of a rock formation. They're already here. We watched as black-clad figures rappelled from the helicopter onto the roof of my cottage. Even from this distance, their precision movements revealed military training. Who sent them? I whispered. Someone who wants what Catherine has on them, Noah replied. Someone willing to eliminate anyone who might expose them. If they're at my house, they'll search Noah's next, I realized. We need to get away from here. Not without the evidence, Noah countered. Everything Catherine built, everyone she's helped protect, it all hinges on what that key accesses. It's just a key to a bank in Geneva, I argued. Even if we could get to Switzerland. It's not just a bank key, Noah interrupted. The patterns on that key are encoded data, digital keys to encrypted servers, location markers for physical evidence, account access protocols. Catherine built redundancies into redundancies. That key is literally the key to everything. The helicopter circled back, forcing us deeper into the shadows. We need to split up, Noah decided. They're expecting us together. What about Gran? If they know about us. Catherine has her own contingencies, Noah assured me. Trust that she's already 10 steps ahead. From my hidden vantage point, I watched more operatives surround my cottage, their movements revealing a level of training and coordination far beyond standard law enforcement. How are we supposed to fight this? I asked, despair creeping into my voice. We're two people against what looks like an entire Black Ops team. Noah's expression hardened. We don't fight, we expose. That's always been Catherine's plan. Expose what exactly? Project Minerva, he said. The codename for a decades-long operation involving intelligence agencies, financial institutions, and corporations like Hayes Development. What kind of operation? The kind that topples governments, manipulates markets, and eliminates obstacles, Noah explained. Victor wasn't just Catherine's ex-husband and business partner. He was their primary operational asset, a deniable civilian cutout for actions no government agency could officially sanction. The implications staggered me. And Gran was part of this? Until she wasn't, Noah confirmed. Her disappearance from public life wasn't just about raising you. It was about extracting herself from Minerva while gathering evidence against them. As Noah spoke, pieces clicked into place. Gran's isolated life, her secret wealth, her elaborate protections around me. She hadn't just been hiding from Victor, she'd been hiding from the organization he represented. The car accident that killed my parents. Minerva, Noah confirmed grimly. Your father discovered financial irregularities that pointed to Project Minerva operations. When he threatened to go public, they eliminated him. And my marriage to Daniel? Was that Minerva too? Noah nodded. Victor suggested Daniel as an asset for surveillance, but the directive came from above. They needed someone inside your life, watching for any sign Catherine had passed information to you. Each revelation felt like another blow, reshaping my understanding of my entire life. My parents' death, my marriage, even Gran's supposed death, all connected to this shadowy operation I'd never heard of until now. Why is this all coming to a head now? I asked. Why not when Hayes' development collapsed? Because of Victor's trial, Noah explained. As long as he was the focus, as long as the narrative centered on corporate corruption rather than government operations, Minerva remained protected. But if Victor's case proceeds with full discovery, if he's desperate enough to reveal his handlers to save himself, they'll eliminate him too, I realized. They already have, Noah said quietly. Victor Whitman was found dead in his cell 3 hours ago. Suicide, according to initial reports. The news should have brought relief, or perhaps justice. Instead, it only underscored the power of the forces now pursuing us. So what's our move? I asked. We can't outrun them forever. We need to get that key to the right people, Noah said. Journalists, international prosecutors, oversight committees, multiple targets simultaneously so they can't all be stopped. And how exactly do we do that while being hunted by what looks like a government black ops team? Noah's expression shifted, a half smile that reminded me suddenly of our father's photograph. We use Catherine's final contingency, he said. The one even I didn't know about until a week ago. Which is Rebecca Hayes, he said simply. You. Me? I'm not a contingency. I'm just Catherine's granddaughter? Victor Whitman's step-granddaughter? James Hayes' daughter. Noah shook his head. You're more than your connections, Rebecca. You're the culmination of Catherine's master plan. The helicopter made another pass, this time with a different search pattern. They're expanding the search grid, Noah observed. We need to move. Head for the cliffs. There's a trail that leads to a cove. A boat will be waiting. How do you know that? Because Catherine arranged it months ago, he said. She knew this day might come. As we made our way carefully through the darkness, a question that had been nagging at me finally surfaced. Noah, you said Gran was right not to trust you completely. What did you mean? He paused, conflict evident on his face. Because I'm still keeping one secret from you. One Catherine made me promise not to reveal until absolutely necessary. Tell me now, I insisted. Victor Whitman isn't just your grandmother's ex-husband, Noah said quietly. He's your biological grandfather. The ground seemed to shift beneath me. That's impossible. My father was William Turner, Gran's son-in-law. Noah shook his head. James Hayes was Catherine and Victor's biological son. They had him before their marriage fell apart. When Catherine discovered Victor's criminal activities and divorced him, she changed their son's surname to Hayes, her maiden name, to protect him from Victor's influence. So my father was actually... I couldn't complete the thought, the implications too overwhelming. Victor Whitman's son, Noah confirmed. Which makes you Victor's granddaughter by blood, not just marriage. Why wouldn't Gran tell me this? I demanded, anger rising through shock. For the same reason she kept the truth about Hayes' development from you, to protect you from the burden of legacy. To give you the freedom to become your own person. The revelation rendered me speechless. I wasn't just connected to Victor through Gran's former marriage. I carried his blood, his DNA, his legacy within me. There's more, Noah said, his voice gentler now. Your connection to Victor is what makes you so valuable to Minerva. and so dangerous to them. I don't understand. Project Minerva operates on bloodline succession for certain positions, Noah explained. Victor was grooming Daniel to eventually replace him as your husband, as the father of your children, continuing the bloodline connection while maintaining operational control. That's medieval, I protested. That's Minerva, Noah countered. Old money, old power, old methods adapted for modern times. We reached the cliff edge, a narrow path barely visible in the darkness leading down to the water. By divorcing Daniel, by refusing to reconcile after discovering your inheritance, you disrupted their succession plan, Noah continued. And now, with Victor dead and you in possession of Catherine's evidence, you've become their most significant vulnerability. As we carefully descended the path, the pieces of my shattered identity began to reform into something new, something defined not by victimhood or inheritance, but by choice. So Gran's master plan, I said slowly, was to position me to bring down not just Victor, but this entire Minerva organization? Yes, Noah confirmed. But she wanted it to be your choice, not an obligation, not a manipulation, but a decision made from full understanding. At the bottom of the cliff, a small motorboat waited, exactly as Noah had predicted. The key, Noah said, extending his hand. I need to verify the encoded data. I hesitated, Gran's warning echoing in my mind. Trust no one. It's okay to doubt me, Noah said, reading my expression. Catherine would want you to question everything, even me. Especially you, I corrected, given your history with Victor. Noah nodded, accepting this. Then keep the key. But we need to access what it unlocks before Minerva finds us. As we boarded the boat, my phone vibrated with a final message before I would disable it. Trust your instincts, not just your blood. Remember what I taught you about power and purpose. Gee. I stared at the screen, suddenly understanding what Gran had been preparing me for all along. Not just to inherit wealth, not just to dismantle corruption, but to make the impossible choice between safety and justice, the choice she had failed to make decades ago. As Noah started the boat's engine, I made my decision. I know what we need to do, I said, raising my voice above the motor. And it's not what either Gran or Victor planned. Noah looked at me curiously. What do you mean? I mean, I'm done being a pawn in other people's games, even well-intentioned ones. If I'm going to bring down Minerva, I'll do it my way. For the first time since discovering my true heritage, I felt completely certain of my path forward. Not as Catherine Turner's heir. Not as Victor Whitman's granddaughter. But as Rebecca, a woman who had lost everything and found herself in the process. As we sped away from the shore, toward whatever destiny awaited, I clutched Gran's key in my palm, no longer feeling its weight as a burden, but as a tool of liberation. The final act of this story would be written not by Gran, not by Victor, not by Minerva, but by me. 3 days on a nondescript cargo vessel brought us to Singapore, a city of gleaming towers and shadowed corners where wealth and secrets flowed like water. Noah had contacts here, former intelligence assets who had broken with their handlers over ethical lines crossed. If Minerva has a vulnerability, it's financial, Noah explained as we navigated the crowded streets. Their operations require massive funding channels that Catherine tracked for decades. We arrived at an unremarkable building in the financial district, riding the elevator to the 37th floor where an elderly Chinese man awaited us. Mr. Chin, Noah greeted him with obvious respect. You're late, the man replied, his accent British and refined. And you've brought the granddaughter. Catherine would not approve. Catherine isn't here, I countered. And I'm done being protected from the truth. Mr. Chin studied me with penetrating eyes. You have her spirit. Perhaps her stubbornness as well. He led us into a secure room where walls of servers hummed softly. This is one of 7 information nodes Catherine established worldwide. Completely isolated from external networks, accessible only with the physical key you carry. I removed Gran's key from my pocket, examining it with new understanding. The notches and ridges weren't just for opening a lock, they contained encoded data. How does this work? I asked. Mr. Chin gestured to a peculiar device connected to the main server. The key is scanned at a molecular level. The pattern contains encrypted access codes, coordinates, and authentication signatures. As I handed over the key, Noah tensed visibly. "Something wrong?" I asked. "Just cautious," he replied. "Once we access this data, there's no going back." Mr. Chen inserted the key into the scanner, and the screens around us came to life with files, photographs, financial records, and video footage, decades of meticulously gathered evidence. "My God," Noah whispered, scanning the information. "It's everything. Government officials authorizing assassinations, judges accepting bribes, corporate executives facilitating money laundering, military leaders selling weapons to terrorist groups." Mr. Chen nodded gravely. "Catherine's life's work. Insurance against Minerva, built one piece at a time while she pretended to be their loyal servant." I approached one screen displaying what appeared to be birth records, my father's original birth certificate listing Victor Whitman as his biological father, and next to it, another document that made my blood run cold. "What is this?" I demanded, pointing to a medical file with my name. Mr. Chen hesitated, glancing at Noah. "Tell her," Noah said quietly. "All of it." "When you were born," Mr. Chen explained, "Minerva took a special interest. As Victor Whitman's granddaughter, you represented the next generation of the bloodline they had cultivated for operations." "What kind of operations?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. "Psychological profiles indicated you would be particularly receptive to certain conditioning techniques," he continued. "More malleable than your father, more psychologically durable than Victor. The perfect vessel for their next-generation asset." The implication made me physically ill. They wanted to turn me into some kind of operative? "More than that," Noah interjected. "They wanted to shape you from birth to become Minerva's next director." Victor was nearing the end of his effectiveness. They needed his bloodline, but with upgrades. And my parents' death? Was that part of the plan too? Mr. Chen pulled up another file, internal Minerva communications, discussing the Hayes situation. "Your father discovered what they intended for you," he explained. "When he and your mother decided to flee with you, Minerva authorized termination." I stared at the evidence of my parents' murder, clinical, bureaucratic, emotionless. Names, dates, operational details laid out like a corporate project plan. "And Gran? Where does she fit in all this?" "Catherine was part of Minerva's inner circle until your parents' deaths," Mr. Chen said. "She had been willfully blind to many operations, justifying them as necessary for global stability. But ordering the death of her son, that broke something fundamental in her. So she took me and disappeared," I said, pieces fitting together. "Raised me away from their influence. While systematically documenting every Minerva operation, every player, every crime," Noah added. "Building this, the most comprehensive intelligence cache on the most secretive organization in modern history." Mr. Chen nodded. "But Catherine knew they would never stop looking for you. The Hayes bloodline was too valuable to their plans." "Daniel," I realized. "They sent Daniel to find me." "To recover you," Mr. Chen corrected. "To bring the bloodline back under control. Your marriage was arranged years before you met him. Your chance encounter at the coffee shop was orchestrated down to the minute." The revelation struck me like a physical blow. Even my failed marriage had been manipulation, a plan to bring me back into Minerva's fold without my knowledge. What was the endgame? I asked, my voice hollow. "Children," Noah said simply. "Your children with Daniel would have continued the bloodline while being raised under Minerva's direct influence." "But I never got pregnant," I said. Noah and Mr. Chen exchanged glances. "Tell me," I demanded. "Daniel was instructed to prevent pregnancy until certain preparations could be arranged," Mr. Chen said carefully. "Genetic modifications to ensure the next generation would be optimized for Minerva's purposes." The depth of violation of my life, my choices, my body left me breathless with rage. "I'm going to destroy them," I said, the words emerging with calm certainty. "Not just expose them, destroy them completely." "That was always Catherine's intention," Mr. Chen said. "But the question remains, how to release this information without being eliminated before it reaches the public." For the next 2 hours, we analyzed the data Catherine had compiled. The scope was staggering: over 60 years of operations spanning governments, corporations, and intelligence agencies worldwide. The names implicated included presidents, prime ministers, tech billionaires, and military leaders. We need to release everything simultaneously through multiple channels, Noah suggested. Media outlets, regulatory agencies, international courts. Too slow, I countered. They'll contain it, discredit it, bury it. What's your alternative? Noah asked. An idea was forming, dangerous, but potentially unstoppable. Minerva exists in shadows, I said slowly. Their power comes from anonymity, from operating behind legitimate institutions. What if we force them into the light? How? By making them come after me publicly, I said. Not Rebecca Turner in hiding, but Hayes Development's heir making a very visible return. Mr. Chin looked alarmed. That would be suicide. Not if we control the narrative, I argued. Not if we force them to operate in full view of the world. I outlined my plan, audacious, reckless, but with potential to succeed where cautious approaches would fail. By dawn, we had set it in motion. 3 days later, I stood in the grand ballroom of the Singapore Four Seasons, surrounded by Asia's financial and political elite at a charity gala hosted by Hayes International Relief Fund, one of the few Hayes entities that had survived the corporate collapse due to its separation from the main company. I wore a gown that cost more than my entire wardrobe before the inheritance, sapphire blue, elegant, commanding attention. My hair was styled differently, my posture transformed from the defeated divorcee Daniel had mocked in the courthouse parking lot. Cameras flashed as I entered. My reemergence after months of speculation about my whereabouts created exactly the stir we needed. Miss Turner, where have you been since Hayes Development collapsed? What can you tell us about Victor Whitman's death? Are the rumors true about your grandmother being alive? I smiled politely, offering no answers but ensuring every lens captured my image. Within minutes, my presence was trending on social media, exactly as planned. Security breach. Noah's voice came through my concealed earpiece. 3 Minerva operatives just entered through the service entrance. 2 more at the main door. Good, I murmured, accepting a champagne flute from a passing server. Let them come. I circulated through the room, greeting financial leaders with confidence I'd learned during my brief tenure as Hayes Development's heir. Many had done business with Gran, their surprise at seeing me evident behind practiced smiles. Miss Turner, a smooth voice spoke from behind me. What an unexpected pleasure. I turned to find United States Senator James Harrington, Judge Harrington's brother, and, according to Gran's files, Minerva's senior political asset in North America. Senator, I greeted him with a warm smile. I wasn't aware you had interests in Singapore. I have interests wherever remarkable people gather, he replied, his charm practiced, but his eyes calculating. Your reappearance has caused quite a stir in certain circles. I imagine it has, I agreed. Though not as much as my disappearance. People were concerned, he said. After all, with your grandmother's passing and the unfortunate business with Hayes Development, many worried about your welfare. The implied threat was clear beneath his polished exterior. How kind of them to worry, I replied. Though I've never been better. I understand you've been spending time with Noah Hayes, he continued, his tone light but his intention probing. A distant relative, I believe? Not so distant, I corrected. But family connections can be complicated. Don't you agree, Senator? His smile tightened fractionally. Indeed they can. Speaking of connections, there are people very interested in discussing your future, Rebecca. People who knew your grandmother well. I'm aware, I said. In fact, I'm counting on their interest. Confusion flickered across his features, the first genuine emotion I'd seen. Excuse me, Senator, I said, spotting my next target across the room. There's someone I must speak with. I moved purposefully toward Elizabeth Chambers, who stood by the bar looking uncomfortable in her evening attire. Her shock at seeing me approach was poorly concealed. Elizabeth, I greeted her. I believe we have mutual acquaintances. She recovered quickly. Rebecca, you're looking, well. Amazing what freedom can do, I replied. Freedom from manipulation, from surveillance, from people like you and Daniel. Her eyes started nervously around the room. I don't know what you're talking about. No? Let me refresh your memory. I moved closer, my voice for her ears only. Project Minerva. Victor Whitman. My parents' murder. Any of that sound familiar? The color drained from her face. You can't possibly. But I do, I interrupted. I know everything, Elizabeth. And in about 15 minutes, so will the world. I walked away, leaving her fumbling for her phone. Through my earpiece, Noah confirmed, she's calling it in. All Minerva assets in the building are being alerted. Perfect. I made my way to the stage where the charity director was preparing to give his address. With practiced confidence, I approached him, whispering in his ear. He looked startled but nodded, stepping aside from the microphone. The room quieted as I took the stage, hundreds of eyes and dozens of cameras focused on me. Good evening, I began. For those who don't know me, my name is Rebecca Turner. Until recently, I was known as the heir to Hayes Development Corporation, a company built by my grandmother, Catherine Turner. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. What many of you don't know is that Hayes Development was more than a global real estate and investment firm. It was a front for something called Project Minerva, a shadow organization that has manipulated global events, toppled governments, and eliminated obstacles for over 60 years. The murmurs became a low roar. Security personnel began moving toward the stage. My parents were murdered by Minerva when they discovered what the organization had planned for me. I continued, my voice amplified throughout the ballroom and streaming live through the charity's social media accounts. My marriage was arranged by Minerva to bring me under their control. My grandmother's death was faked to protect her from Minerva's reach. Two men in suits reached the stage steps. I recognized one as a Minerva operative from Grand's files. The other was hotel security, looking confused by the situation. At this moment, evidence of Minerva's operations is being released to media outlets worldwide, I announced. Financial records, assassination orders, blackmail materials, decades of crimes committed by people in this very room. Complete chaos erupted. Some guests rushed for exits. Others pulled out phones. Security personnel converged from multiple directions. And for those Minerva operatives currently moving to detain me, I added, be aware that this entire event is being broadcast live. Any action against me will be witnessed by millions. As if on cue, the ballroom's enormous screens switched from charity promotional materials to streaming viewer counts, already in the hundreds of thousands and climbing rapidly as the live feed was picked up by news networks. Senator Harrington pushed his way onto the stage, his public face firmly in place. Ms. Turner is clearly unwell, he announced, reaching for the microphone. Her family's recent troubles have taken a psychological toll. Is that your professional assessment, Senator? Came a strong voice from the back of the room. Or is it Minerva Damage Control Protocol 17V? The crowd parted to reveal Catherine Turner herself, walking steadily toward the stage, very much alive and accompanied by a team of Interpol agents. Senator Harrington's composure cracked. Catherine? This is impossible. Many things thought impossible are merely inconvenient truths, James, Gran replied, joining me on stage. Like the existence of Project Minerva. Like your involvement in my son's death. Like the mountain of evidence currently being reviewed by prosecutors in 37 countries. On cue, the screens displayed a real-time map showing data packages being opened by media outlets globally, each dot representing another piece of Minerva exposed to public scrutiny. It's over, James, Gran said firmly. The shadows you've operated in for decades are gone. Hotel security, now reinforced by Singapore police who had been positioned nearby as part of our plan, began detaining individuals throughout the ballroom, Minerva operatives identified through Gran's extensive files. As the chaos unfolded, I spotted a familiar face moving determinately through the crowd toward the stage, Daniel, his handsome features contorted with rage. You've ruined everything, he shouted as security intercepted him. Do you have any idea what they'll do to us now? I know exactly what they'll do, I replied, my voice carrying through the microphone. They'll turn on each other to save themselves. That's how organizations built on power and fear always end. As Daniel was led away, I turned to address the cameras directly. My name is Rebecca Hayes, I declared, reclaiming my father's true family name. For generations, my family has been both victim and perpetrator in a system designed to concentrate power in the hands of the few. Today, that system is exposed. Gran stood beside me, her hand finding mine in a rare public display of emotion. To those watching who have been harmed by Hayes development, by Victor Whitman, by Project Minerva, I cannot undo those wrongs, I continued. But I can promise that every asset, every dollar, every resource I control will be dedicated to healing the damage my family helped cause. The ballroom had become a scene of controlled chaos, arrests being made, evidence being secured, witnesses providing statements. Through it all, the live broadcast continued, ensuring that what happened here could not be contained or denied. Noah joined us on stage, completing our unlikely family circle. "It's done," he said quietly. "Minerva's communication networks are compromised. Their contingency protocols are exposed. Their safe houses are being raided simultaneously across 6 continents." Gran nodded with grim satisfaction. "And Victor? His death was confirmed," Noah said. "But his legacy ends here." As we stood together, the 3 surviving members of a family torn apart and manipulated by forces that had shaped global events for decades, I felt an unexpected sense of closure. The world would never be the same after tonight. Governments would fall. Corporations would collapse. Power structures built on decades of manipulation would crumble. The ripple effects would transform global politics for generations. But in this moment, what mattered most was simpler. The truth, finally exposed to light after decades of darkness. "Ms. Hayes," a reporter called out as we prepared to leave the stage. "What happens now?" I looked at Gran, then at Noah, then back to the cameras that were broadcasting my words to the world. "Now we rebuild," I said simply. "Not what was lost, but something better. Something honest." As security escorted us from the ballroom, Gran leaned close to my ear. "I always knew you were the strongest of us," she whispered. "The only one who could finish what I started." I squeezed her hand in response, knowing that while Minerva's exposure marked the end of one chapter, the work of healing the damage it had caused was just beginning. Outside the hotel, as we were ushered into armored vehicles by Interpol agents, I caught sight of the city skyline illuminated against the night sky. Somewhere in that vista stood buildings owned by Hayes Development, symbols of an empire built on corruption and control. Those buildings would remain, but their meaning would change, transformed from monuments to power into resources for restoration. Just as I had been transformed from victim to catalyst, from pawn to liberator. The vehicle pulled away from the chaos we had unleashed, carrying us toward an uncertain future. But for the first time since learning the truth about my family, I felt something beyond anger or purpose. I felt free. 18 months later, I stood at the edge of a newly completed community center in La Paz, Bolivia, one of 17 such projects funded by the Hayes Reparation Trust across communities that had once been devastated by Hayes Development's mining operations. Children played in the courtyard while local leaders gave journalists tours of the medical facilities, educational spaces, and sustainable agriculture program. "Miss Hayes, a moment, please." I turned to find a young reporter hurrying toward me, recorder in hand. The media's fascination with my story had finally begun to fade, but the 18th-month anniversary of what history now called the Minerva disclosure had renewed interest. "What can I do for you?" I asked. "Do you regret it?" she asked directly. "Giving away the remaining Hayes fortune? You could have kept billions for yourself." I smiled, having answered this question countless times. The money was never truly mine. It belonged to the communities destroyed in its making. "And your personal life? There are rumors about you and—" "My personal life is private," I said firmly. "My work is what matters." As the reporter departed, I felt Noah's presence before I saw him. "Still no comment on the rumors?" he teased, joining me at the railing. "Some things aren't for public consumption," I replied, watching the children play below. "How's Gran?" "Terrorizing her physical therapists as usual," he said with affection. "The doctors say her recovery is remarkable for a woman her age." The assassination attempt 3 months after the Singapore exposure had nearly succeeded. A Minerva loyalist, one of the few who escaped the initial roundup, had gotten close enough to fire 2 shots before security intervened. Gran had survived, but the road to recovery had been long. "The International Criminal Court is announcing the final indictments tomorrow," Noah continued. "Over 300 Minerva operatives and associates facing charges. Judge Harrington and the others who took plea deals have finished naming names. And Daniel? I asked, the name no longer carrying the emotional weight it once had. Sentenced yesterday. 20 years for conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to murder. I nodded, feeling no satisfaction, but a sense of appropriate conclusion. Did he say anything at sentencing? He asked to speak to you. I declined on your behalf. Thank you. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the community that was rebuilding itself with resources that had once been used to exploit it. The Hayes name means something different now, Noah observed. Something better. That was the goal, I agreed. Not redemption, that would be too simple. Transformation. My phone buzzed with a message from Eliza, my assistant. The new Hayes Foundation board was assembling for our quarterly meeting via video conference. As the foundation's executive director, I had final reports to review before presenting our next phase of projects. Duty calls, I said to Noah. Coming. In a moment, he replied, his gaze fixed on the mountains beyond the town. Sometimes I still can't believe we pulled it off. Neither could I. The aftermath of Minerva's exposure had been as seismic as we'd anticipated. Governments had collapsed. Financial markets had convulsed. Intelligence agencies had been gutted and rebuilt. The world order shaped by decades of shadow manipulation had been forced to reorganize in the light. Throughout the chaos, I had remained visible but focused, channeling what remained of the Hayes fortune into direct reparations while testifying against Minerva operatives in courts worldwide. The woman who had once been scared to confront her ex-husband now addressed the United Nations with unwavering conviction. I made my way to the center's administrative offices where a secure connection had been established for the board meeting. 18 faces appeared on screen: community leaders, human rights advocates, financial experts, and environmental scientists who now guided the foundation's work. Welcome, everyone, I began. Before we review this quarter's projects, I have some personal news to share. I took a deep breath, the weight of the decision I'd made finally lifting as I prepared to speak it aloud. Today marks my final meeting as executive director of the Hayes Foundation. Effective next month, leadership will transition to our regional directors through the succession plan we established last year. Surprised murmurs filled the virtual room. May I ask why, Rebecca? Asked Dr. Nasser, our medical programs director. Because the foundation no longer needs a Hayes at its helm, I explained. The work we've done together has established systems and relationships that can thrive without the symbolism of my presence. It's time for me to step aside and let those directly connected to affected communities lead. The discussion that followed was respectful but probing questions about timing, about my future plans, about the foundation's direction. I answered each with the clarity I'd developed since Singapore. When the meeting concluded 2 hours later, I sat alone in the quiet office, a strange sense of completion washing over me. 18 months of intensive work, of testimony, of public scrutiny, of rebuilding what had been broken, had reached its natural conclusion. Noah found me there, leaning against the doorframe with knowing eyes. You told them, he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. It's time. Gran will be pleased. She's been saying for months that you need to live your own life, not just atone for hers. Is that what I've been doing? Atoning? Noah considered this. Maybe at first. Not anymore. He was right. The initial drive to make amends for Hayes Development's crimes had evolved into something more authentic, a genuine commitment to healing broken systems. There's someone waiting to see you, Noah said, gesturing toward the center's main entrance. I followed him outside to find a familiar face I hadn't seen in over 2 years, Mrs. Patel, my former neighbor from the apartment building, standing nervously by the fountain. Mrs. Patel? I hurried toward her. What are you doing in Bolivia? She smiled, the familiar warmth in her eyes untouched by time. Your brother arranged it. Said you might need a friendly face from before. I embraced her, suddenly aware of how few connections remained from my life before the inheritance, before Minerva, before everything changed. I'm so sorry about what happened, she said. How Daniel used me to manipulate you. You have nothing to apologize for, I assured her. You were kind to me when I had nothing. That meant everything. We spent the afternoon together, her simple presence bridging my past and present in a way that felt healing. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the courtyard, Noah approached with a package. "Special delivery from Gran," he said, handing me a small box. "She insisted it had to reach you today." Inside was a key, not the encoded key that had unlocked Minerva's secrets, but a simple house key attached to a familiar keychain. The little metal house Gran had given me on my 16th birthday. A note accompanied it. "My dearest Becca, your work is complete. Mine too. The legacy we inherited and the one we created have both been transformed into something worthy of the future. This key opens the door to the cottage by the lake, the only property I kept from my former life. It's yours now, not as an heiress, but as a woman who has earned the right to choose her own path forward. Whatever you decide, know that I am prouder of you than words can express. All my love, Gran." Tears blurred my vision as I held the key. The cottage by the lake, where I discovered the truth about my family, where Gran had hidden her most personal journals, where this journey had truly begun. "Will you go?" Noah asked quietly. "Yes," I decided. After all this time focused on the past and on making amends, I think I'm finally ready to look forward. 2 days later, I stood on the porch of the lake house as sunset painted the water in shades of gold and crimson. The peaceful setting contrasted sharply with the memories it held, discoveries that had shattered my understanding of family, of history, of myself. The door opened behind me as Gran made her way onto the porch, moving carefully with her cane. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she admitted, joining me at the railing. "I wasn't sure either," I replied honestly. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink below the tree-line. "What will you do now?" Gran finally asked. "Now that you've stepped down from the foundation." I considered the question that had occupied my thoughts for months. "Live," I said simply. Not as Catherine Turner's granddaughter. Not as Victor Whitman's blood relative. Not as the woman who exposed Minerva. Just as Rebecca. And what does Rebecca want from life? The question was so fundamental, yet no one had asked it of me since before my divorce. Perhaps no one had ever asked it. "Connection," I answered, surprising myself with the immediacy of the response. Real connection, not manipulation disguised as relationship. Work that matters, but doesn't consume me. And I hesitated, the last part feeling almost too vulnerable to speak aloud. "And?" Gran prompted gently. "And to know that who I am is enough," I finished. "That I don't need wealth or power or status or even purpose to be worthy of love." Gran's eyes filled with tears, a rare display of emotion from a woman who had spent decades concealing her feelings. "You've always been enough," she said, her voice thick. "Long before the inheritance, before Minerva, before all of it. I'm sorry if my choices ever made you doubt that." As night fell over the lake, we moved inside to the cozy living room where Noah had built a fire. The three of us, a strange family formed through secrets and blood and shared purpose, sat together as we planned the next chapter. "The cottage is officially yours," Gran explained, along with a modest trust that can't be traced to Hayes' development. "Enough for security and comfort, not enough for the burden of wealth." "Have you decided what to do with your share?" I asked her. Gran nodded. "It's already done. Every cent has been transferred to the rehabilitation fund for former Minerva victims, people who were manipulated or coerced into the organization's service." Noah raised his glass in a toast. "To endings that enable new beginnings." As we talked into the night, I felt something settle within me, a sense of rightness, of completion, of peace that had eluded me since discovering my true heritage. The following morning, I woke early and walked alone to the edge of the lake. The water was mirror still, reflecting the cloudy sky above. In its surface, I studied my reflection, searching for traces of Victor Whitman, of Catherine Turner, of the legacy that had shaped me without my knowledge. What I found instead was simply myself, Rebecca. Not defined by inheritance or trauma or revenge or redemption, but by the choices I had made when facing impossible circumstances. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text message from an unknown number. 5 years reduced from my sentence for cooperation. I'll be out someday. We're not finished. D. I stared at Daniel's message, remembering the woman who had once stood trembling in a courthouse parking lot as he mocked her worthless life. How strange that his threats now seemed so small, so impotent compared to what I had faced and overcome. I typed a simple response. We were finished the moment I stopped believing I needed your approval to have value. Goodbye, Daniel. Then I blocked the number for the final time, dropped my phone back into my pocket, and continued my walk along the shoreline. When I returned to the cottage, Noah was waiting on the porch with coffee. You seem different this morning, he observed, handing me a steaming mug. I feel different, I admitted. Lighter. Gran mentioned you received a message from Daniel. I nodded. His final attempt to maintain some power over me. Did it work? No, I said truthfully. It just confirmed how far I've come. Noah smiled. So what now, Rebecca Hayes? The world is waiting. I considered the question, sipping my coffee as I gazed out at the lake. Now I do what Gran never could, I said. I live a life that's truly my own, not defined by wealth or legacy or obligation or guilt. Any idea what that life looks like? I smiled, feeling the first genuine excitement I'd experienced in years. I'm thinking about teaching, I said. History, maybe. Helping young people understand how power operates, how systems can be corrupted, how individuals can make a difference. I can see that, Noah approved. Professor Hayes has a nice ring to it. As we sat together in comfortable silence, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here, from a broken divorcee with nothing to her name, to an heiress with unimaginable wealth, to a woman who had chosen justice over fortune and truth over comfort. The car that had started it all, Gran's old Toyota that Daniel had mocked, was long gone. The wealth that had temporarily defined me had been distributed to heal wounds my family had helped create. The man who had once convinced me I was nothing without him was serving a prison sentence for crimes that spanned decades. And I was here, alive, whole, free from the weight of secrets and schemes that had defined generations of my family. Later that day, as Gran, Noah, and I prepared to leave the lake house, Gran to her rehabilitation center, Noah to his ongoing work with the international prosecutors, and me to explore whatever came next, I paused at the door. My hand on the key Gran had given me. You're welcome here anytime, I told them both. But I think this place needs some new memories to balance the old ones. What kind of memories? Gran asked. Happy ones, I said simply. Genuine ones. Ones not shaped by secrets or strategy. As we drove away from the lake house, I watched it recede in the rearview mirror, not as a symbol of wealth or power or hidden truths, but as a place of possibility. A place where Rebecca Hayes, not Catherine Turner's heir or Victor Whitman's granddaughter, could begin again. 6 months later, I stood in front of my first university class, 30 students looking at me with a mixture of curiosity and indifference. The small liberal arts college in Vermont was about as far from international intrigue and billion-dollar corporations as one could get. Welcome to Power Structures in Modern History, I began. My name is Professor Hayes, and this course will examine how invisible systems shape our world, for better and for worse. A hand raised in the back row. Yes, I acknowledged. Are you the Rebecca Hayes? The one who exposed Project Minerva? I had expected this question, had prepared for it. Yes, I answered honestly. Which means I've experienced firsthand how power can corrupt and how truth can transform. This course isn't about my story, though. It's about understanding the systems that shape all our stories and how we can change them when they no longer serve humanity. As the semester progressed, I found unexpected joy in teaching, in watching young minds grapple with complex ethical questions, in mentoring students who reminded me of myself before wealth and tragedy had complicated my life. On weekends, I volunteered at a local women's shelter, working with survivors of emotional and financial abuse, women who, like me, had been convinced of their worthlessness by manipulative partners. How did you rebuild? One woman asked me after a particularly emotional session. After losing everything? By realizing I hadn't lost everything, I told her. I'd lost a relationship built on lies. I'd lost money that was never really mine. But I hadn't lost myself, even when I thought I had. My modest campus apartment became a home, filled with books and plants and simple comforts that needed no security systems or staff to maintain. Noah visited monthly, bringing news of the ongoing prosecutions and foundation work. Gran called weekly, her recovery progressing as she found her own version of peace. On the anniversary of the Singapore disclosure, I received a package from an international courier. Inside was a first edition of Robert Frost's poems with a note. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. The road you chose wasn't the easiest one, but it was the right one. Thank you for your courage. Billions whose lives are better because of your choice. The note wasn't signed, but I recognized the handwriting, Mr. Chin, who had helped us access Gran's evidence. I placed the book on my shelf, a reminder of the journey that had brought me here. That evening, as I prepared notes for the next day's lecture, my phone rang, a video call from Gran. "How's my favorite professor?" she asked, her face looking stronger than I'd seen in months. "Busy," I admitted. "But good. Really good. Noah tells me you've been asked to write a book about Minerva." I nodded. "I'm considering it. The world needs to understand how these systems operate, not just the dramatic exposure, but the decades of quiet corruption that preceded it." "And what about you?" Gran asked. "Beyond the teaching and the writing. Are you happy, Rebecca?" The question gave me pause, not because the answer was difficult, but because I realized I hadn't asked myself this simple question in a very long time. "I am," I said, surprised by the truth of it. Not because everything is perfect. Not because the past has been erased. But because I finally know who I am beyond all the labels and legacies. Gran's eyes shone with tears. "That's all I ever wanted for you." After we said our goodbyes, I walked to my window overlooking the campus green. Students crossed the quad, their lives untouched by the weight of billion-dollar inheritances or multinational conspiracies. Normal lives with normal concerns, the kind of life I'd never truly had until now. My phone buzzed with a message from a local number, Dr. Evan Mitchell, a history professor I'd met during faculty orientation. "Still on for coffee tomorrow? The place by the library has those pastries you liked." I smiled as I typed my response. "Definitely. Looking forward to it." Evan didn't know about my inheritance or Minerva when we first met. He'd simply been a kind colleague who shared my interest in historical power structures. Our friendship had developed naturally over shared lunches and academic discussions, the first relationship in my adult life untainted by manipulation or hidden agendas. Whether it would become something more remained to be seen. But for once, I was in no rush to define it, content to let it unfold naturally, honestly, without the shadow of wealth or danger hanging over it. As night fell over the campus, I returned to my desk and opened my laptop. The blank document that would eventually become my book stared back at me, cursor blinking expectantly. I began to type. "My name is Rebecca Hayes, and this is the story of how I lost everything that didn't matter and found everything that did." The words flowed easily now, not just the facts about Minerva and Hayes' development and the global reckoning that followed their exposure, but the more personal truth about a woman who discovered her worth had nothing to do with wealth or status or even purpose. A woman who had been broken by betrayal, then rebuilt herself stronger than before. A woman who had found her voice in the aftermath of devastating loss. A woman who had learned that the most valuable inheritance isn't measured in dollars, but in the courage to choose a different path than the one laid out before you. As I wrote deep into the night, I realized the story I was telling wasn't just about the fall of a shadow organization or the redistribution of ill-gotten wealth. It was about transformation. From Rebecca Turner, divorced and destitute, mocked by her ex-husband in a courthouse parking lot, to Rebecca Hayes, heiress to a corrupt fortune, targeted by forces that had shaped global events for generations. To simply Rebecca, professor, author, survivor, woman of purpose and integrity. A woman who had lost the wrong love to finally find herself. And in finding herself, had discovered that was enough. More than enough. It always had been.